Welcome to part two of a webinar series. And this particular webinar, if you join us for part one, or even if you didn't, this is called Supporting Students to Become Vape-Free. In part one, we focused on vape-free policies in college campuses. So now we're moving from that part of the nuts and bolts to now how do you support college students who are here? And once again, I am Tony Astron. I'm the PR and Communications Manager with the New York State Quitline. I will be your moderator for today. And a few housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded. We'll mention again at the end of the webinar, but yes, not only are we recording it, we will have this posted. If we can by later today, we will, but most likely by tomorrow, as well as the slide decks, both for this part two and part one. That'll be available at our online newsroom. Everybody who has registered will receive a link to all of the materials, as well as an evaluation, which we'll be discussing later on as well. And if you're watching this recorded, well, we're great. You can join us at this point too, and hope that you find both this webinar and if you want to check out the previous one as useful resources. And especially at this time of year, we have now entered into the month of August. It is that time where students are beginning to come back to campus. You can use for those of us who are here live today, for any questions for any of the presenters, please use the Q&A box as opposed to the chat for the questions. The Q&A box will capture all the questions just in case we have a number of questions and need to revisit them afterwards or respond to you later. That's a great way just to keep it captured, contained, and make sure that all of you have a chance to participate. We are saying that everyone's muted, although technically with the way that the controls work, technically I think everybody is unmuted, but therefore we ask you, if you can, please stay muted throughout the presentation. We will do all of our Q&A verbally with the speakers, and of course asking the questions through the chat box. Same disclosures and advisements as in part one. There's no conflicts of interest to declare, no funding associated with this webinar, no financial benefits. We do have certificates of attendance that we are able to provide you should you need them. I will have my contact information both at the end of this presentation and through email for those of you who have registered. At any time that you would like to get a certificate of attendance, please reach out. Happy to get that for you right away. And importantly, again, the term tobacco throughout this webinar, it refers to the use of manufactured commercial combustible products and vape products, not the sacred, medicinal, and traditional use of tobacco by Native American nations and other indigenous groups. Our presenters for today, it's going to be a little bit different compared to part one. We're going to do a little bit more discussion. There are some great presentation slides coming up, especially from right there in the middle from Ms. Gabriela Potievsky from Fashion Institute of Technology. She'll be what I like to call the meat and potatoes of today's webinar, giving you a lot of those hands-on tips and things to think about. But we're bookending it with two different portions. We're going to get to Julia in just a second, and I'll explain why we've got her to start it. But closing, we have two different speakers from two different CUNY schools, City University of New York, Melaine Clark and Fabian Wander, and that will also be a discussion format with some questions. And of course, even though we are doing some questions with them, as always, if you have things that come up, things that you'd like to learn, we are going to have time at the very end for Q&A, with the exception of Julia, and I'm going to mention in a second, she is so graciously joining us and on a quick work break. I'll get to that in a moment, but let's quickly go over the goal. Our goal for today is to help equip campus administrators, student health center staff, educators, counselors, and youth-serving professionals with the knowledge, tools, and strategies needed to effectively support students in preventing, reducing, and quitting vaping while fostering a healthy, supportive school environment. So at the conclusion of this webinar, you should be able to identify the health, behavioral, and social impacts of nicotine vaping and e-cigarette use among college-age students, describe the common indicators of vaping and the factors contributing to student nicotine use and dependence. You can demonstrate effective, non-punitive approaches for engaging students in conversations about vaping and motivating behavior change. And finally, identify evidence-based cessation programs, school-based supports, and community resources, including the New York State Quitline, to help students become and remain vape-free. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into our first presenter, and I'm going to stop sharing slides for a quick second. I'm also going to see if I can highlight, I believe I can for everybody, Julia. Julia is one of our many, what we like to call success stories. It's something that we compile every year. We've been doing this for, gosh, since well before the pandemic. And it is just something that has grown in terms of a process where we are able to do our research and sometimes the stories just come to us, to be honest. But Julia responded to the call and really had just an amazing story. If you haven't seen it already, at our website. Even though she's a few years removed from college, she's still fairly young enough, and of course, went through, you're going to learn in just a second, the whole process of getting hooked on vaping at college, feeling like, oh, geez, I don't like this anymore. What can I do to overcome it? And we're going to learn a little bit about her story, but we are so grateful that she's willing to start us off. And the reason why we wanted to start off with her is before going into how do we treat college students, wanted to sort of set that stage to talk to somebody who's lived that experience, who became addicted to vape products and the process of going through it and now becoming vape free. So, a little bit about Julia. In fact, one moment here, I'm going to reshare my screen just for a second. One thing about you can see some of these slides. These are some of the quotes from the success stories. If you go into our website, which I'll explain in just a little bit about her. But she is an adult psychiatric nurse in the Lower Hudson Valley region. She is born and raised in New York State. She did go away to school, University of Colorado at Boulder, and then came back. So, but let me stop sharing the screen. That's a little bit about her. You'll see that in the slides again. But Julia, welcome. I know you are on a quick break and you got to run in about 10 minutes or so.
Mhm.
So we'll keep some questions short just to keep some dialogue. If people have questions for you afterwards, I can forward them to you later if people would like to engage in a dialogue. But um, first and foremost, I mean, you had tried cigarettes in college briefly, then you switched to vaping. Just kind of wondering, like, what drew you to tobacco products? Because you didn't start until a college age. And did you think that switching to vaping would be like a better alternative to cigarettes? Is that kind of how it all came together for you?
Yeah, I think just the exposure to it in college was something that made me start. You're at a party and you share cigarettes with someone, and then all of a sudden you want to bring your own to the party, kind of thing. And then I switched to vaping because it was just easier to just have on you. And then all of a sudden I was buying my own, and then I was addicted. It just like happened without me even really like being fully aware of it.
Oh wow. Okay. But I know from talking with you though, you did make that attempt to go vape free, and that really strong attempt. You were heading out, if I recall, it was on a vacation with your
Yes.
boyfriend, his parents. Um, what was that like when you were trying to go vape free and trying to overcome the cravings and stick to it?
Yeah, it was definitely anxiety inducing at first. And but I knew that you guys obviously have a lot of like support people, and there was somebody who would call me and check in with me, which was really nice. And I told them about going on vacation with my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, and his mom, and that trip was pretty important to me, and I wanted to be vape free for this relationship because I knew that it was important to me. And it was definitely, how is it going to go? How am I going to, you know, be able to have access to like my lozenges, and like what if I need to get into contact with the support person? But it went relatively smoothly. It went way better than I thought in my head, and I was able to overcome the cravings with the help of the patches and the lozenges.
Oh, that's fantastic. And see, this is everybody, this is proof that this is not fully scripted because I did not know that now you are married. So that's fantastic. That's great to hear. I knew he was your boyfriend and pretty serious, but since the time that because we did this story about a year ago, that's fantastic
Thank
that you've
you.
now taken that next step. And I know that that was a big part too, is that just wanting to, if you were going to be serious about it, to start on a healthy path. So congratulations, way to
Thank
go.
you.
And I will say for all of you, I mean, yes, we're glad that our services help, but from the slide you saw that she learned about the quit line through her doctor, and we always like to say, we can get you started, but it does. The people who I think tend to have the most success, it's that mentality of it takes a village. Use all the tools and resources that are available. And that's why a webinar series like this too, the college student centers, they're what an amazing resource, and to have somebody who cares and can offer that guidance, in addition to, of course, what we have, our primary care physicians. So that's great. And going back to thinking about sort of where you were and the quit process. Um, I know when you were telling me about how you did used to feel when you were vaping, and you enjoy being active and healthy and running, and I believe you had told me that your lungs used to hurt when you ran. Like, what else do you remember from the time when you were vaping in terms of like how you felt health wise, and now like how you feel with being vape free? I'm kind of wondering, just in terms of, did that play a big part in your decision to make a quit attempt and stick with it?
Yeah, I would say my energy level after quitting has been a lot better too, because when you're vaping, it's so easy to just go on your bed and like scroll on doom scroll and like vape. And I feel like it was just making me lazy. And I've talked to other people who have vaped too, and they say the same thing. So definitely my energy level. There were times where like my throat felt like it was hurting because like it causes the inflammation.
Mm.
Um, so those three things, definitely.
Wow, I didn't even stop to think about the whole hurting of the throat. That's
Mhm.
yeah. So wow, okay, great. Well, hey, you're let's thinking back to your college years in your mid 20s, and now you just recently turned 30. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does it feel? I mean, keep going with that. Like, is it, how freeing is that now to be vape free? And I guess to close, any advice that you would offer to college students who may be hearing this, or even just the professionals who help treat them, about those who are struggling and really want to quit? Anything you would offer from your experiences?
Yeah. It's been such a freeing experience. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this webinar. And, we've been in contact for the past year. I'm obviously a healthcare professional as well. So I get to now tell my patients and relate to them on a different level. I do have some young adults, and I tell them about NY and the quit hotline. And a lot of them didn't know about it before. And I get to share my experience about like, it's hard, but it's worth it because you do it once, you do the hard thing once, and then hopefully you don't have to do it again because it is something that is, it's a struggle to get through, and you have to be very mentally prepared for what you're going to go through. My advice would also be for people who want to quit. I remember so many times where I would say, "This is the last vape that I'm going to buy." And then after that, I'm done. And it was just a cycle like that. Like you just have to really throw that vape out. You cannot have it in your apartment or your house or like anywhere for, maybe I'll want it when I'm going out and like having a drink. No, you cannot have it. Throw it out. You need to get rid of it. Out of sight, out of mind makes it so much easier. And having some support systems, like really utilizing the people that New York State Quit Hotline supplies, those people that call you and talk to you and check in with you, really utilizing all of that.
Wow, that's what a story. So that's fantastic. And for those of you who may check out Julia's story, if you haven't already, hers was unique for our page where we actually had two people from Manhattan. And the funny thing enough is the other person we wanted to have her as well. She was unavailable, but it's so funny how they were both, different types of experiences, yet similar age, and both had issues with, starting it in college. So yeah, just very, very inspiring stories. Julie, we can't thank you enough for sharing some time with us. I know you got to run in
Course.
just a minute here. One quick question that came from the audience here in the chat box, and I think you've kind of already touched upon it, but in terms of, as you were vaping, did you have like your doctor where you saw the pamphlet from and everything? Did your doctor, kind of tell you like, hey, maybe you should quit, or any other medical professionals as you were going through it, or really just was it more of a decision on your own?
Um, it was more of a decision on my own. I don't think that I really told a lot of my doctors about it because I was embarrassed.
Mm,
And so when I saw that pamphlet, it felt more anonymous to me and
okay,
taking that home and doing it on my own. Um, I did eventually, I do see a therapist and they were helping me through as well. But up until I like really decided to quit, I hadn't told any of the healthcare professionals.
gotcha. Well, that's fascinating. So, all right, and that's, I will give a shameless plug, which I will be mentioning at the end again of this webinar about our Drop the Vape service, because that is free and confidential. And for those who want to at least get started through text messaging, that's a great way. So, but great, yeah, that's fascinating about just the feeling, kind of the shame about it. But I think,
Mhm.
again, your story here and being able to share that and let people know that, hey, it's okay if you're struggling, but get the help. It's there, and you'll feel so much better. A great inspiration. So, Julia, I know you've got to get back to your shift. We appreciate what you do. Thanks for paying it forward
Mhm.
too, in terms of helping out your patients,
Of
and hopefully,
course.
again, your story sets the stage here, just to remind people about why we're trying to do all this. So, thank you so
Yeah.
much again, Julia. You take care. We'll certainly keep in touch.
Of course. Thank you guys so much.
All
Thanks for
right.
listening. Bye.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and reshare our slides. So hopefully this is back on here. And as mentioned, we do have a full page devoted to our success stories. It's an offshoot on our newsroom. You can get there. If you could visit our newsroom, you'll see the link for the success stories. This screen, imagine it not left to right, imagine it as a big scroll thing. We drew some inspiration creating these stories almost by, if any of you remember the tips campaign, tips from former smokers from the CDC. With these stories, we always put in just our past 5 years. We don't want to make it too cumbersome to read. We have stories that are older than that, but we keep it to the past 5 years. And you can sort, as you see through this page, stories by primary reason for quitting, by age, by type of product, and by location. So if you're looking for somebody to, share with a patient, or you have a friend maybe who wants to quit, direct them to here, and they can hear it from other people. It's one thing if we say that we've got great services to help, or, we all know that, it's not great for your health to smoke or vape or whatever, but we also know and all agree it's not easy to quit. It's like Mark Twain said, quitting's easy. I've done it 1,000 times. But these stories, so inspirational, real people here in New York State, all walks of life, and all different types of reasons for quitting. So if you need extra inspiration to find your why, start here. With that, let's go into our second presenter. We are so just gracious to have Gabriela Potievsky from the Fashion Institute of Technology. She joined our listserv a couple of years ago, and I'd found that, hey, she's got some sharp skills here, and she answered the call. We put out a call to a couple people that we thought might be interested in helping out with the webinar, and she came right through. And Boy, I've gotten to know her now over this past month or so preparing for this, and perhaps she can tell you a little bit more about it. But she's also part of an organization, a local group, the New York State College Health Association, which is the chapter of the National Association. But she's on their board, preparing for a big conference coming up this October in Syracuse. So as you're going to see, she knows her stuff. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her to give us some of the nuts and bolts for how do we support students who may want to become vape free. Gabriella, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone. Just as Tony introduced me, you can call me Gabby. I'm not really specific about it. So my background is I'm a dietitian as well as a health educator. I have my undergrad in public health. I got it from Rutgers, and I do both at my position at FIT. I do nutrition counseling, smoking cessation, and do a lot of outreach. Luckily, when I first started, the campus was already transitioning in being tobacco free. Now we're also vape free as well too. So luckily, we already had those policies in place, and I was just helping with signage. With the conference planning too, if you all are part of American College Health Association, you're automatically part of the New York State chapter, and that's a place where we either, seeking for speakers there. So if you're doing your own research or become a really great in one topic, um, look at next year's if you want to join us. Otherwise, I'll put my email in the chat if you want to learn more. The conference is in October, and we always try to do it in the middle of New York State, so all members of New York State College Health can attend, and we're open to non-members. So if you're not a member of the New York State College Health Association, you can still attend the conference. And it's all about also networking, connecting, seeing what other colleges are doing, because I feel like we're all siloed, we're all doing more than one thing. As you can hear, I'm also a dietitian and also doing smoking cessation. So without further ado, let's get into the presentation. So like Tony said, I'll be really talking about really how to approach that student, being mindful about being empathetic and being confident, talking about effective counseling and communication strategies, and just some practical tips and resources just to really support students. So how to approach a student. So I really split it up by thinking about different positions on college campuses. Sorry for the fire, the emergency services, the joys of working in New York City. So as I'm in the college health clinic, one big thing is just having, that routine screening questionnaire on just health history forms, or even just if I know within our college, they're not mandated to complete it. So not everyone's filling out their health history forms. So always asking, just like that depression screening, is that being asked once a year? And again, I sometimes ask smoking and vaping, because what I'm finding is when providers are only asking about smoking, some students are like, well, vaping's not smoking, it's different to them. So understanding that smoking does not always encompass vaping for some students. So really asking that too. I also see that some electronical medical records before students check in, you can always have those questions appear right ahead before they're checking in, depending on your EMR system. So that could also be asked right then and there before every visit, or if you want to set it up once a year. And I also like to ask about the frequency and the pattern of use, because some people are like, oh, I don't do it often. And what does that mean? So really fine tuning of what that really means is important too. So if they're being very vague, I ask how often does one vape last them? Or if they're using a friend's vape, like we heard before, right? That's how she started, was just vaping. That's how Julia was doing it. So just how often is it? Once a week? Is it twice a week? If they're not sure, or they say it's only when I go out, and then I ask, okay, how often are you going out too? So prompting them once a week, twice a week, once a month, that really helps them really guide them too. So don't be afraid to guide them. For a college health center too, also for their intake assessment, that's a great question to have. I find too, when I asking how they cope about stress, that comes out that they vape too. So really fine tuning what are those coping mechanisms. Or sometimes I do hear students saying, oh, nothing healthy. So that's also another way to kind of explore whether vaping is part of what does unhealthy mean versus eating or other coping techniques. Also knowing that there's some schools with health promotion offices. So being mindful of having just digital signage or materials on social media, sharing it with the main social media, or like at my school, I own my own social media account for health services. So later in the slides, I'll be promoting. There is a Drop the Vape where there is already digital assets that you can download and post without really putting too much effort. Thinking about just having flyers around campus, because even having an event, not everyone's stopping by. You're not going to target every student. We've got students who are coming only on the weekends or in the evenings too. So thinking about those flyers are a great way to get every student who's coming on campus, as well as staff who might not realize you are a tobacco-free campus. And then really training the peer educators to really asking those open-end questions, not being judgmental. So I put some questions here if you do train peer educators. So saying, what are your thoughts on vaping? You know, have you heard about the health effects of vaping? So really knowing what the student knows before the peer educators like, hey, let me tell you what I think you know. So that really helps create that open dialogue, a team effort versus one person telling the other person what to do. So if you see tobacco's products being used on your campus, so at FIT, we have that issue happening. So just being mindful of how you're approaching, being very respectful and saying, hey, I'm an employee or a staff member or faculty, and just wanted to let you know that the campus is tobacco and vape free, whether it's an old policy, new one. So really also pushing through with just saying, hey, we want to keep it healthy for everyone, you know, asking them to help out, refrain from using these products while on campus. And then usually the lead up is also, well, where can I smoke? And just saying that they'll need to leave campus property. However, what I've noticed at the FIT campus is non-FIT campus means the street. So it's just one step off the campus. So that's just something to be mindful of, is when we send out an email at the beginning of every semester, we also encourage students not to be using vape products while they're even in the streets, to think about our neighbors, because the whole street's not only FIT campus stuff. It is also, as well as we have some traditional neighbors too who have complained in the past. So we just, like I said, every semester send out an email and a reminder to be respectful of neighbors. So the biggest thing is doing some motivational interviewing. And I did put links to where I'm finding a lot of these talking points online. So each website has more information than what I put in here. So I encourage you to look on your own, to look more so. So really engage the patient on the topic first. Like I said, with motivational interviewing, it's more like a dance where you're both coming at it together versus one person talking at another person. So whether you see that they said they're vaping or answered your question in person, just saying, hey, I noticed that you wrote that, or you just said you vape. You know, can I ask you more questions about this? Can we talk more about it, right? See, you really get to see if they're open and willing to talk about this. If not, then that might be, hey, can we schedule another time to talk about this? And if they're willing to talk more about it, asking about what are the good parts about vaping? And then what are the not so good points about vaping, right? So a lot of people know what they need, what is not great and what isn't great about it. So just really hearing it from their words, and then just kind of summarize and just kind of say, hey, I see, you aren't worried about your vape use, but you don't like when this happens with the coughing or the dry mouth or whatnot too. So that's something to summarize and just, really put the onus on them about, do you want to change now? Do you not? Another great technique is from 1 to 10, rate this. And then if they give you a number, let's say it's 7, ask them, why didn't they pick 6? And then why didn't they pick 8, right? Really find that, why aren't they ready, or are they ready to change? So what's worked in my practice is really talking to patients about the stages of change model, which is really about the original research was using smoking cessation as its foundation. And I really like to hone in of, hey, you know, in this behavior of change, they saw that it takes multiple times to go through the circle. People drop out at different times. So just being, really reduce that guilt of, I know you've tried this in the past, or, I know it's hard, and no, it is hard. It is very addictive. So really, like Julie said, they need to know what they're up against, and knowing, hey, just because you drop out of the stages of change doesn't mean that you can't restart it at some point later in the year, in your life too. Just know it's just, you might need a refresher, a break from trying and redo it. So just being really realistic with them so they know what they're getting into and they don't have as much guilt and shame, and really can set those realistic expectations and goals from themselves. I also like to talk about the security blanket, which what that means is, the first time I heard about it is really about eating disorders, saying that vape is their security blanket. If we're pulling that security blanket out of their arms, what are they falling to for comfort? And I always say, if you don't have something else for comfort, you're going to go back to vaping. So really being mindful of, hey, let's make sure before you even start quitting is that you already have new coping strategies incorporated that you can start falling back into, so you're not going to that vape. Another thing is I really like to reframe and say, hey, you're using healthy habits in this ritual vaping. So I really ask them, are you missing the vaping, or are you missing taking those deep breaths? You're also stepping away from the activity that's stressing you out. You're usually in a social setting with friends. Can you continue doing that without the vape? And then two, just reframing thoughts. You know, Usually people, they say it's hard to stop it is because it brings them joy or helps them cope with life. So that's something for them to start connecting and saying, no, this is not bringing me joy. This is actually bringing me harm, and or thinking of the most grossest thing they can think of too. So helping them really associate vaping as something negative will help them and encourage them to quit too. So let's say you have met with the student, they're willing to quit or not. So just assess you since the last visit. So just asking about, how are you doing with vaping since the last time we spoke? Are you thinking about quitting? Are you comfortable with your current use, right? These are really things that I would encourage you to reread, have saved before you're meeting with a student, just so you can even use this. And if the student's really not ready to quit, so that's okay. Again, summarizing, saying, hey, it seems like you're fine with your vape usage. However, maybe it's your parents, a partner, friends, someone else, a coach is bringing up to them about quitting, and then you're bringing it up, right? Just, sometimes even talking about the elephant in the room helps get the person more comfortable and to open up. And there is that scale 1 to 10 of how important is the issue. So you can really gauge if someone's on the lower end of 1, they're really still not ready to change, and just having to do that educational point too, or just even connecting them with New York City Quits, because sometimes those health coaches really do help through texting, and really get them really engaged and ready to quit. If the student is more contemplating, ready to change. It's just, right, encouraging them, saying it sounds like you've been thinking a bit about your vape usage, right? So what's making it scary? How can I support you? Right, asking these questions so you can work together as a team to get them ready to change. Or if the student's ready to begin the change, it's like, okay, you're ready, thought a lot about this. How can we start you to create your quit plan today? Or, um, you know, what do you need? So having a quit plan can help. There's so many options online. I'm just posting some questions here to ask. So, what are the changes? What's the most important reason? What steps? Who can help you? How can they help you? And then, what can interfere? And then I like what I know. How will I know this plan is working? Really asking the patient to fill this out together. And I always say, hey, keep this near your vape when you're thinking of quitting, or look at this every morning, if the urges to vape is first thing in the morning, right? So having this accessible, reading it through, having that plan makes it more successful for the patient. And last but not least, this is a short list of resources that you can utilize. Like I said, New York Quits, I really like them because they offer a free texting program where I'm finding a lot of students don't want to be talking over video or phone. So that's something, the digital assets too, that's something that you can be printing out, or call 311 and get those resources printed and delivered to you. For those who aren't ready to change, sending them to the American Cancer Society, really just saying, hey, learn more about the health implications of vaping. That can really sometimes help gauge them of, hey, this is more serious than sometimes social media posts can downplay the impacts of vaping, as well as the Truth Initiative. They have a quitting resource too from the Mayo Clinic too. So if your patient has tried New York Quits and it's not helping, just knowing, hey, there's another resource out there, and they also have some social media toolkits too. So just being mindful of utilizing some of those other resources too. Does anyone have any questions? Happy to answer.
We will thank you so much, Gabby. Actually, we will save our Q&A for the very end for with all speakers combined. We do have a great question in the chat. We'll save that for the end. We do want to get to our final presenters as well. But first and foremost, fantastic tips and knowledge. And for those of you wondering in the chat, again, we will have the slide decks and the recording available through both email and posted on our newsroom. If not later today, definitely by tomorrow. So stay tuned. And as you saw throughout Gab's slides, a lot of great links to find some of those resources for yourselves too, especially if you're looking for tip sheets or model templates for some of those questions to ask your students. So great stuff, Gab. We're going to get back to you in just a second here. But what I do want to do with about the next 10 minutes here is we have two presenters here, both from CUNY colleges, Melaine Clark from CUNY John Jay College of Criminal Justice and Fabian Wander from CUNY Hostos Community College, each related in different aspects with their health and wellness. And when we were looking into the reason why we're transitioning here now is we talked first to start with somebody affected by vaping, the process of becoming vape-free, now the resources for students, and now we end this whole series with all of this is out here, creating your policy, knowing how it affects students. How do you approach them? How do you treat them? With all of that, we have all those tools. Now, how do we get the rest of the campus on board? How do we communicate it and make sure that a vape-free college campus is indeed part of the culture? So that's what we're going to explore here just for a little bit with both of these individuals. And I gotta say, we first reached out to a longtime collaborator, Andrea Fasci, who is she's the CUNY-wide health and wellness coordinator. She was unavailable, but she immediately said, you know what? Reach out to both Fabian and Melaine. They've both been here a long time, have a lot of knowledge, and a mix of different experiences. I think you'll enjoy hearing what they have to say, and we're about to find out right now. So with that, I'm going to, before we get to questions, Let me stop sharing and we can go back to video because we're going to have just a quick discussion here before we get into the Q&A. So welcome, Melaine and Fabian. And also just from an audio standpoint, if for those of you who didn't hear it earlier, there will be a little bit of an echo from Elaine's end as their campus just transitioned to Microsoft Teams. So apologies in advance for that. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. But let's get right into the questions here. For one or for both of you to answer, just point blank, how are messages about vaping, vape-free policies, support resources, how are those being communicated across your campus?
Sure. Thank you for your question, Tony, and inviting us. Gabby, what a wonderful presentation. I'm definitely going to utilize some of that information in the work we do at the college campus. So just a bit of historical context comes to smoking policy at CUNY. The Board of Trustees at the City University of New York voted to ban smoking after January 1st, 1995. Inside all buildings that are owned, leased, and operated by the university. So, 1995, we're about 31 years later, if I did the math correctly. And we have now e-cigarettes and vaping, and things have changed since that time. About 10 years ago or so, I was invited to be a member of the campus tobacco policy committee to look at kind of revamping some of the work that we're doing on our specific campus at Ostos Community College. And e-cigarettes is one of the things that was mentioned in there. As part of that, we looked at kind of tweaking the policy and also looked at resources that we can provide. We put up signage around outside of the campus, really. And, deep hidden within our website, you can probably find our tobacco policy, which I'm sure no one's really looking at or reading. And so, the communication is extremely important, right? How do we communicate to our students? Our students range from 17, 18 to 60 to 80 years old, right? We have a really wide range, predominantly in the early 20s is our student population. And, when we think about communicating to that population, to that generation, it has to be done in multiple channels, right? So communication is always changing, it's fluid. Now we know students like to use social media as a means of getting information and staying on top of, what's happening in this world. So we have to capitalize on that means of or channel of communication, but we still have to go back to the older ways of doing things as well, right? So hanging up signs on the campus where you see a lot of student traffic, emails, which some students now are not into emails anymore. Text messaging is another strategy that we've used to communicate to students to get, important information out there. We have to use like multiple ways of getting that information, and we have events throughout the campus. I saw our nurse, wonderful nurse, Maria Vasquez, on this call, and we run a wellness fair every, once a year. We do other health events, and one of the things, we used to bring this old kind of frame with cigarette boxes and show them the frame and show the health implications of smoking. That's now has changed, right? Vaping has become the go-to for younger people. Unfortunately, it's easier to kind of hide. Smells are different. And as I was preparing for this presentation, Tony, when you sent us the information to me, I said, let me ask our director of public safety just to see what has been happening on the ground with respect to vaping. And he did indicate that there are students in the bathrooms sometimes, they get caught with vaping in the hallways because it's something that is different than smoking a cigarette. You really, can get away with it a little bit quicker and easier. So we talked about how can we address this as a collaborative, entity. And so I do thank you for inviting us here, because that's something that we're actually going to be rolling out a really strong campaign about vaping on campus, but more as a supportive approach of looking at how we can support those students through these wonderful resources at the New York State Quitline, through the posters that we're going to be sharing. We also engage students in our counseling center when they come in for the first session. We provide an intake with them, and one of the questions is related to vaping. So we get an idea if they are vaping and if it is something that they'd like to work on through, as Gabby mentioned, motivational interviewing and other strategies. So we really have to kind of look at it from a wider lens, and we also have to get everyone on board, from faculty to student affairs to public safety, maintenance, because as FIT is located in an urban setting, so are we. And so is Smilane and John Jay. And so, you step outside of the campus of the building and you're in, your regular street in New York City. So you can't really control what happens out there. But we do have signage that says, please, a certain amount of distance from the campus. We also mentioned children in that signage that, we don't want to, have that secondhand smoke infect some children that are around our campus. So we use multiple strategies, but that's really kind of how we've been addressing it so far.
Oh, that's
And
that's quite a bit of information there. And I'm sorry there, Melaine. Yeah, please feel free to add into that.
just to echo Fabian's points, also taking it outside of just hanging flyers and newsletters. One of the things we at CUNY have been doing is to get faculty and staff on board. So not just having the information posted or through the newsletters. What we have been doing is asking these professors and faculty members to make that information a part of their syllabus. So, students use that as their Bible. And so if that information is there within the syllabus, each time they go to look at an assignment, that information will pop up on their syllabuses as well. We have also been making sure that we present at the orientations, be it parent orientation or student orientation, so that everyone has the information. In terms of employment onboarding, we also have information for employees as well, where the information is there, because when everyone has the knowledge and has the information, it's a condensed effort to make sure that our students are pretty informed about the resources that are available, because mainly our goal is to inform and to educate the students about the policies, and also provide them with the resources and connect them to the resources so that they can quit if they choose to quit, or give them the knowledge so they can help someone else outside of themselves who are quitting. So we are trying to empower them to quit, and also with the knowledge to help others. Or
I think we just lost your audio there right at the end there, Melaine, but we caught just about everything that you had to say. That was some good stuff. I think also for the sake of time, I'm gonna kind of ask one final question, sort of combine two different things I was gonna ask just to get your perspective. Then we'll switch to Q&A and look to wrap up soon. But um, you know, obviously both both of you, it sounds like at your campus you've thought of many, many different ways to not only communicate messages that are out there both for support, for promoting the policy, also different events, health fairs, things like that. But looking at all that together, sort of a two-parter, do you think both in terms of students and fellow faculty to get them on board, are they understanding what these messages are also about? And then in addition, like how do you find that balance between wanting to promote the policy, making sure people are following the rules versus, well, look, no, this is all about support. We want to, make sure you've got the help that you need. So, anything that kind of comes to mind in terms of just the understanding and building that groundswell of both adhering to the policy, but understanding that we are a supportive campus.
I think that's a great question, Tony, and I'll start off. Melaine will finish, I think. What we're as I mentioned earlier, I'm in conversations with our Director of Public Safety to provide them with information as well. So when, let's say they're called about a student vaping or they see a student vaping around the campus, they can, approach that student in a friendly, supportive manner as they usually do, but also provide them with a brochure, some information, and letting them know that we have a wonderful health services office on campus. We have the counseling center available on campus. And these are just two on-campus resources that can provide them with support and resources to other external support services. So I think that's going to be our approach moving forward. And I think that's also something we're going to look at engaging faculty and staff with, so they have that information easily available so they can make those referrals to the support as a way of just showing the students that we care about them and we want to help them and we're here for them if they are interested.
And I'll just add my piece. So one of the things that I talk on my campus on is that when you're looking at a policy, you have to also look at how compassionate you are. Because we all know that vaping, tobacco use is an addiction. So yes, you want to enforce the policy, but at the same time, you cannot forget the compassionate side of it. They are not competing priorities, So they work together to create a successful tobacco-free, vape-free campus. And one of the first things you have to let the campus know and the administrators know that nicotine dependency is a health issue. So when you are looking at it from that angle, it's a health issue. Behavior is gonna take time, and student will benefit from encouragement and support. So our aim is you notice a student is, vaping. The first thing you have to do is to educate them. It's a health issue, and you ask, do you need help to quit? And then from there, you can refer. And then you'd refer them to whatever resources that we have available on campus or off within the community, and you provide that support for them. And once you have all these pieces in place, you will find that the policy gradually grows on people. So they will continue to know about it, see it, but then it's not coming from a place of judgment. It's coming from a place, I know you are struggling with this. This is what is here to help you, and we are here to help you along the way. Because everything takes support and holding their hands and taking them step by step. So we'll provide information on the policy. You also educate them about the health impacts and the benefits of quitting, and also make sure that we are there should in case, they fall off. Then we are there to introduce them to the pieces that we have and help them along the way. So that's how I look at it, and that's how I try to implement any policy at all on my campus. We'd always come from a place of compassion.
Wow, that's fantastic. A wonderful way to begin to wrap things up here. And I did bring Gab back into the spotlight section. We're almost at time, but what I'm going to do is we have two really great questions that are here in the Q&A. So I'm going to sort of paraphrase them, and if we could do sort of a rapid fire response. So the first one I'm going to ask to Gab, because I think this is more along your wheelhouse here, and I don't know if you saw it here in the Q&A, Gab. But the basic premise is that you have students kind of feeling like, well, hey, everything gives you cancer nowadays, so why should I stop? Like, do you have any kind of like general advice if you happen to approach that kind of mindset about, what can you do or say to kind of help people reframe and think that, hey, you do have some control over your health?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. We do have some control, and I always say the goal is to reduce how much toxins we're consuming. I always say, like, hey, think about when we cut ourselves, or our skin gets a little red. inflammation's normal and our body heals ourselves, right? It's not like we have a gushing cut on our finger for the rest of our life. So even though we're ingesting some toxins through everyday use, being in New York City, this lovely air, but I always say we want to reduce, our body can handle only up to a certain amount, and thus adding a ton more, you're just making it harder for your body. And I also like to say, how do you want the rest of your life to look like? Do you want to be in pains and aches and going in and out of the doctor's office, or really reduce your toxin intake so your body can handle it because you're properly giving the right nutrition, the right physical activity, sleep too? It's not just reducing those vaping, but also say, hey, you also have to do other lifestyle stuff too. But really asking them, is the vaping more important than being in and out of doctor's visits, and stuff like that too? And just say it's all about reducing as best as we can.
And that's great. We definitely emphasize that at the quit line as well, that, even if you're not ready to quit or you aren't going, the full way to, at least, every day with one fewer cigarette or vaping, that's a victory for your health. And, if you can at least get started, then you can work from there to, the goal obviously is to completely become tobacco or vape free. But if we can work to reduce, that's less harm. So we are actually a little bit here at time. So the final question, but I won't ask it here just because we're going to wrap up, was really about working with other resources throughout the state, et cetera. For example, in New York City, do you work with the New York City Department of Health, with the State Department of Health? Person here in the chat mentioned about working at a county Department of Health, working with colleges to use Juul 7 funds. And perhaps that's something we can address afterwards through email or whatever, if you have any thoughts on that. But I will just say, from a general point of view, yeah, I think that collaboration is really where it's at. And for those of you who weren't part of part one, I recommend check that out. There were resources at the end that one of our presenters, Jen Hamilton, offered in terms of where to look for additional support. Of course, those of you who are here in the New York City area know that besides the New York State Quitline, NYC Quits, which is local to New York City, we work with them much like, I'd say, peanut butter and jelly. They offer a lot of the same things. We collaborate on initiatives. So, and I am seeing some other questions in the chat, but unfortunately, we are a little bit out of time here. We'll try to answer those after the fact. Let me just pull up here. We did questions. Of brief plug, of course, this is brought to you by the New York State Quitline. Just want to remind everybody again, if you didn't see this in part one, we do offer Drop the Vape. It is a service through the New York State Department of Health and run by the New York State Quitline. It is confidential, free, 6 weeks of text, really to build those skills to overcome vaping and figure out, okay, well, why is it that I vape? How am I going to overcome cravings? And just really, as you can see here from the slide here, no pressure, no judgment. It really does feel almost like you have a friend in your pocket, a sense of accountability, and get as much or as little as you need out of the service. All the free resources are here, and especially for those of you who are working at college student health centers, I think you may enjoy sample presentations, newsletter copies, flyer, handouts. There are physical cards and brochures that you can order. So you have that in the screen code. You can see that on our website, at the Department of Health's website. It's all there. It's waiting for you to give to your students so that they understand there's yet another resource available if they need it. And of course, the Quitline, vaping is a newer thing on our services, but of course we've been around 26 years now, and still the bread and butter, I would say, of who we're helping are those who are trying to overcome commercial combustible cigarettes. And yes, some students, college students, do smoke regular cigarettes as well. So we have that help too, different types of text programs. And people, of course, they want the confidentiality, they want it at their fingertips. So going online is a very, very popular way to do it. If you're maybe not ready yet to talk to a coach and go through working through a quick plan, you can go online and try the ordering that way and see if maybe you're just only a little bit comfortable. Start there. Follow us on social media, of course. And then the one thing I would say is our website has a wealth of information. We're not just simply the place to go to get some coaching and to get some free medications. No, we're more than that. We are education, knowledge. The savings calculator is a great tool to see how much you would save by quitting. And for healthcare professionals, such as many that are on this call, There are ways to do different types of referrals and ways to make it easier on yourselves, whether it is students or clients or otherwise. We've got those tools available, and we are always happy to partner up and help with whatever you may need. This is a link here for the evaluation. And for those who are watching this recorded, please feel free to do the evaluation. You see that there, the link is there. Everybody who has registered for this webinar will get this afterwards this afternoon with a link. We encourage you to fill out. We want to see what we can do that's better. And then other than that, that's our contact information. Myself, Pat Bax, who's at the controls, Paula Celestino, who heads up the marketing and outreach team. We're so glad that you took some time out of your day to learn about these resources. Hope you've enjoyed both parts if you have done both. Again, we'll have these recordings up by tomorrow, if not sooner. We want to thank our speakers. What fantastic resources from all of you to share those real world experiences. We hope you've been all inspired by it. And now, as students are coming back, this is vape products in particular. This is the product du jour of those 18 to 24 and beyond. We know, of course, college students run the gamut for ages, but it's pretty much young adults, and they vape, and there's many want to quit. So let's give them those resources that maybe they don't even know exist if they want to become better and healthier, much like Julia. So thank you all for your time. We appreciate you being part of our series addressing vape product use on college campuses. And stay tuned, stay connected to the Quitline. We'll continue to have further webinars on all sorts of topics, and contact us anytime if we can ever partner, whether it's helping you or helping a patient or client. Thanks again. I'm Tony Astern signing off. Hope to see you again soon.